shots were fired inside the restaurant by rival biker gang members at each other. We had wounded inside, we had people stabbed, we had people shot, and we had people beat. Every piece of evidence, every vehicle, every blood spot, every body that was there. The bodies have all been removed and sent away for forensics and for autopsy results.
More than 170 people were arrested. President Obama is announcing efforts to cut back on shipments of military equipment to local police. The president says the use of militarized gear by local police departments can give the public the feeling that law enforcement is like an occupying force. His words, according to the president, such an image can send the wrong message to the community the police is trying to protect. A Republican congressman plans to stay in office despite questions about some donations.
New Hampshire Congressman Frank Inta says he's not resigning after the Federal Election Commission's finding that he broke the law by accepting more than $350,000 in campaign donations from his parents. In a letter on his campaign website, Ginta disputed the finding, saying he contributed to the account over 40 years, so the money was his. He did acknowledge the money was not properly reported. New Hampshire Senator Kelly Ayotte says if she were Ginta, she'd resign, and the head of the New Hampshire Republican Party called the situation serious and extremely troubling. Jerry Bodlander, Capitol Hill.
Arizona families can now get welfare for no more than 1 year in their lifetime, the shortest time limit in the nation. Policy analysts say most states impose a 5-year lifetime limit, while 13 states limit the benefits to 2 years or less. Welfare is federally funded, but Arizona's governor called the cuts necessary to protect taxpayers and elementary education as the state of Arizona faces a $1 billion budget deficit. Twitter is paying a price for favoring pornography. AFN's Charlie Butts reports an expert on social media porn believes the price will rise even higher.
Twitter has become quite a source for pornography, according to Don Hawkins of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, formerly Morality in Media.
We've been trying to tell people for a couple of years how bad Twitter really is. It's really become a micro-porn site with thousands of tweets going out each hour that have hardcore pornography and link to hardcore pornography websites directly.
Twitter has defended its position on porn to the public and stated there will be no restrictions, although it recently softened a bit by saying it is attempting to segregate the ads from the pornography. Hawkins suggests the best alternative is to just ban the porn up front.
But one of their big advertisers, Nielsen, it's a digital marketing firm, they found out that when they were running ads, that their ads were showing up right next to some of the pornographic tweets. And so they completely pulled all of their advertising.
So Hawkins hints other advertisers concerned about their image might be rethinking their policy for ads on Twitter, too. In addition, she suggests users ask Twitter to ban porn. I'm Charlie Butts.
It's not uncommon to see no experience necessary in job openings or announcements, but it's another thing to see it in Major League Baseball.
The Miami Marlins have announced that General Manager Dan Jennings will take over as the team's manager following the dismissal of Mike Redmond. Jennings does not have any managerial experience and takes over a team that is fourth in the National League East Division with a 16-22 record. Jennings has been with the Marlins organization for 13 seasons and has 31 years of professional baseball experience. Christopher Stock, Miami.
And stocks kicked off the week on a positive note. The Nasdaq rose 30 points Monday, the Dow 26 points, and the S&P inched up 6. For more news and information, visit
years ahead of the dominant media. FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this May 18th, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Now, today I'd like to just make a few comments about the Tony Alamo Christian Ministry. First, it's a story that I've been doing in depth for the past year. And before that, I started doing it years and years ago, and watched this Christian ministry get persecuted by the Vatican-led New World Order. And I'd like to show you that the Vatican-led New World Order is an old organization, but is alive and well today in America. And the Tony Alamo Ministry is a perfect example of how the pastor in that ministry and its members were looking at the Vatican from a biblical and a secular point of view. First, in the Bible, they pinpointed how Revelation, the book of Revelations, calls the Vatican institution the Antichrist. And in the secular world, the pastor, Tony Alamo, used to spend a lot of time on radio, on TV, doing newsletters all over the world, millions of copies. By the way, his ministry still gets over 3,000 hits a week. So there are people interested in this. And because he had a large following, the Vatican had targeted him since the 1970s. And finally, they have put him in jail for bogus charges, a sentence that is completely ridiculous, 175 years. The man's in his 70s. And when you look at the entire story, you will see that this is a frame job from the beginning, and they were targeted for those views. The truth about the Vatican in the Bible and the truth about the Vatican in the world. Now, later in the week, I'm going to have a couple interviews with some members of that ministry. But today I wanted to, with that in mind, I wanted to look, because Tony had talked a lot about the Jesuits as well as the Vatican. And so I started looking. And when I first came back from Rome, I'd worked there for 7 years and learned firsthand what they were all about. I was there during the Vatican Bank scandal. And I started to, when I came back to the States, I started to check around and see who understands what they're really about. And I found very few pastors in the Protestant ministries that, well, if they knew, they would hide it. But Tony wasn't one of those. And he, in fact, was one of the first to allow a Jesuit priest, Alberto Rivera, who was telling the truth about the Vatican, to speak at his ministry back in the, I believe it was the early 80s. Now, from there I started looking, and back 20, 25 years ago, there weren't many people, and the message has grown. So I started to check out who else is talking about this. And since people are fascinated now with YouTube, everybody likes to watch a YouTube video. I checked there, and I see a whole group of videos done. Here's one, Alberto X Jesuit interview. Karen Hodges exposes all the Jesuit order. Jesuit Templar Nazi occult eugenics, paganism, blood, and soil. Full-length video. The Mask of the New World Order, the Jesuits. A Lamp in the Dark, Enter the Jesuits. The Flat Earth Masonic Matrix Manipulators. NASA's Fake Ball Earth versus the True Flat Earth. Lucifer's New World Order, Exposing the Jesuits, and that was done by Walter Veith. I'd interviewed him a long, long time ago. Jesuits in the SDA Church, interesting. Seventh-day Adventist Church, they're everywhere, these Jesuits. They're in the Mormon Church, they've infiltrated everywhere. The Ecumenical Movement. Who are the Jesuits is another video. Jesuits, Priesthood, Absolute Evil, Exposed. Vatican Witchcraft and Satanism. The Priest Who Spoke with Jesus Christ, a must-see video. Jackie Killed JFK. Jesuit Conspiracy. Interesting. Haven't heard that theory. Owner of the world's biggest banks, the Vatican. And when you start doing a research study on their finances, it's amazing. And the Vatican's role in the New World Order by Bill Hughes. And Bill, I've interviewed many, many times on my show, and he's written a couple books. The Secret Terrorists is one of them. So there are people out there who understand this. But as I view this is quite interesting. I'm going to go to someone who's going to give you, I'm going to play, I've got a tape message here about the Jesuit order, United States under siege, Vatican Nazis. And the tape message I have from this gentleman who put this together, he's from religiousmatrix.com. I always look at the comments on stories, and most of all these comments come from Christians and people who are interested in the faith. It's very few secular people. What they'll do is people who have been led astray by the Vatican. For example, let me give you an idea. I grew up as a Catholic and went to Notre Dame High School. And then fell away from the church. And what happens when you realize that something's up? You become an atheist for a while. That's what a lot happens to Catholics. You don't believe in anything anymore. And that you're still prey to the Vatican. And basically your mindset is, I don't want to hear one word about religion ever again in my life. I don't want to see the book of the Bible. I don't want to see anything. And so what happens with these videos and these books that are written and stories that are told, and even shows like mine, people that haven't found their way back to some type of faith just turn it off and go, I don't want to listen to this stuff. But they're the same ones that are going to turn on the Kardashians and all that satanic worshiping going on TV and all the signs and symbols. And the Kardashians and Bruce Jenner. And in fact, I was just considering and talking with someone who had a great view on Bruce Jenner and said this is the downfall of the American male, and here comes the worshiping of the goddesses. And when you see all the symbols with Jenner and the Kardashians, the satanic, it's amazing. And so that's what happens. People will look at that. But they will, when they see something like Jesuits, Vatican, I don't want to read, that's nothing. What importance is that? What importance is that? Well, and that's why I bring up the story of Tony Alamo, because here's a man that tried to show you the importance, and because he was reaching people, he's sitting in jail right now. And you're going to get the whole story from a couple family members, not Tony's family, but from his church, that have lost their children over this. And you're going to see this week something, I hope when you see these kind of things, on the web, people that are doing some really good work, you just give it a listen. Because I will tell you this, unless you understand this aspect of the New World Order, which is actually the Old World Order, you will not understand why we're in Babylon right now. Because it won't have any meaning for you. So I have this tape-recorded message here from religiousmatrix.com, and I wanted to play it for you. And so this will give you an idea what the Vatican and the Jesuits are all about. For those of you, there's many people who understand this, that listen to my show, but if you just happen not to, you got to start from square one. And this is a good one because it's about an hour, and it really gets to the core of the matter. And you can hear it from someone else outside of me. And I'll still tell you, there's only a few people in this country that really talk this way. Only a few people in this country that really understand this. When you consider there's 360 million people in America right now? And I've heard they want to pare it down to like 60 million by 2025. Interesting. You never know about those things. But anyway, let's listen to what really is the Jesuit order, the United States under siege, and the Vatican Nazis. Let's give it a listen.
People generally forget the mistakes of the past. Citizens who were caught up in Hitler's Nazi Germany hardly noticed the gradual development of extremism, mainly due to high emotions and dazzling propaganda. But history often repeats itself. FEMA plastic coffins, detention centres, armed checkpoints and armoured military vehicles for civil purposes are well-documented facts. and witnesses who have worked for the United States military claim stores of guillotines located in Fort Lewis military facility. The latest revelation of Obamacare sanctions death by guillotine, code ICD 9E978. However, Obama was only following the mandate of the World Health Organization, one of the specialized agencies under the United Nations. Is the United States government getting ready for a fascist quasi-dictatorship involving forced religion? It would not be the first time that fascism and counterfeit Christianity have merged. Fascism and Catholicism have become synonymous throughout history. Recent developments have seen so-called Protestantism clasping hands with the Vatican. Protestantism once meant protesting against the Roman Catholic Church and her doctrine, labelling the Pope as the Antichrist as the Reformers proclaimed during the Reformation. An ex-Jesuit priest, Dr. Alberto Rivera, explains, "In America, the Vatican's agents were at work to wipe out the Protestant movement through ecumenism. The secret sign to be given to the Jesuits worldwide when this was accomplished by the Vatican was when a President of the United States took his oath of office facing an obelisk, four-sided pillar that resembled the Washington Monument and the one in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. For the first time in history, the swearing-in ceremonies were moved to the west front of the Capitol, and President Reagan faced the Washington Monument on January the 20th, 1981. For those who are unfamiliar with the Jesuit order, it was the Catholic answer to counteract the Reformation sparked in 1517. Loyola Ignatius's formula for the formation of the Jesuits was approved by Pope Paul III in 1540. Napoleon Bonaparte had this to say about the Jesuit order: "The Jesuits are a military organization, not a religious order. Their chief is the general of an army, not the mere father abbot of a monastery. And the aim of this organization is power. Power in its most despotic exercise. Absolute power, universal power, power to control the world by the volition of a single man. Jesuitism is the most absolute of despotisms, and at the same time the greatest and most enormous of abuses. The general of the Jesuits insists on being master, sovereign, over the sovereign. Wherever the Jesuits are admitted, they will be masters, cost what it may. Their society is by nature dictatorial, and therefore it is the irreconcilable enemy of all constituted authority. Every act, every crime, however atrocious, is a meritorious work, if committed for the interest of the Society of the Jesuits or by the order of the General. The Vatican has historically used civil powers in past ages as she does today. Kings, dictators, presidents and prime ministers bow and scrape to the most powerful and richest organization on the planet, because it is politically expedient to do so. The Roman Catholic Church is secretly tightening her grip on geopolitics and the autonomy of nations who are secretly serving the Pope. Pope John Paul II and President Reagan worked together, bringing about the collapse of the Soviet Union, with the first blow being the breaking down of the Berlin Wall. After years of the Vatican being accused of being un-American, the United States and the Holy See announced the establishment of diplomatic relations on January the 10th, 1984. Under the Reagan administration, the Senate confirmed William A. Wilson as the first U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. The alliance between the United States and the Vatican benefited both political powers. The Cold War and Marxist atheism made the Vatican and the United States unlikely bed partners. As US presidents are well aware of the authority the Vatican wields, with just over 1.1 billion Catholics spread throughout the world, Jesuit educational facilities also spread and indoctrinate both Catholic and non-Catholic students with Jesuit maxims around the world, shaping the minds of future leaders so the Vatican is truly a force to be reckoned with. Some idea of the real estate and other forms of wealth controlled by the Catholic Church may be gathered by the remark of the New York Catholic Conference, namely that his church probably ranks second only to the United States government in total annual purchase. Another statement, made by a nationally syndicated Catholic priest, is perhaps even more telling. The Catholic Church, he said, must be the biggest corporation in the United States. We have a branch office in every neighborhood. Our assets and real estate holdings must exceed those of Standard Oil, AT&T, and US Steel combined. And our roster of dues-paying members must be second only to the tax rolls of the United States government. Avro Manhattan. The Central Intelligence Agency was the creation of Roman Catholic Knights of Malta member Alan Dulles. In recent years, CIA NSA directors have been Catholic Jesuit-educated men. Historically, the confessional was the biggest intelligence-gathering machine of the Vatican. But now electronic surveillance has superseded the confessional as the single most effective tool of modern times, giving the edge on business, politics, and religion. A Catholic has first duty to the Pope before loyalty to a king, queen, or country. Perhaps this is why many misgivings are expressed about Roman Catholics holding positions that pertain to national security. Furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman Pontiff, Pope Boniface. The Roman Catholic Church has always been savvy, influencing armies to do her bidding because wars cost money. Let's take a look at the leaders that the Vatican has used in the past to achieve her religio-political ends. King Clovis I, who united the barbarian tribes that eventually became the Franks, and then enforced the rule of the Roman Catholic Church during the decline of Rome after Emperor Constantine moved the capital of the Roman Empire to Constantinople. King Charlemagne enforced Catholicism and was then crowned emperor by Pope Leo III at Christmas in 800 AD. King Charles IX ordered the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of the Huguenots, French Calvinist Protestants, beginning on the 23rd of August 1572 in mostly Catholic Paris. King Philip II of Spain ordered the Spanish Armada to invade Protestant England in 1588. Dr. Alberto Rivera, an ex-Jesuit priest, also gives us information on the rise of Adolf Hitler. Another great inquisition was about to begin. Instead of wearing Dominican robes, they were wearing Nazi uniforms. Hitler's brown shirts, called the Nazis, back to the Vatican, used the same tactics of Mussolini beating and bullying opposition into submission, including Roman Catholics. Dr. Alberto Rivera. Hitler's book Mein Kampf was ghost-written by Jesuit priest Father Steinfeld. When it became known that Pope Pius XI supported Hitler, the Roman Catholic vote swept Hitler into power in 1933. Jesuit Father Himmler, an uncle of Heinrich Himmler, was a favourite of Jesuit Father General Count Hulk von Lidakowski. The SS organisation had been constituted by Himmler, according to the principles of the Jesuit order. The regulations and spiritual exercises prescribed by Ignatius Loyola were the model Himmler tried to copy exactly. Himmler's title as Supreme Chief of the SS was to be the equivalent of the Jesuit general, and the whole structure was a close imitation of the Catholic Church's hierarchical order. Walter Schellenberg. Munich University was founded with papal approval in 1472 and was previously the University of Ingolstadt. Eventually becoming a stronghold of the Jesuit order, the university also became the centre of the Counter-Reformation. Jesuit Petrus Canisius was the rector of the university. Both Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, and Pope Benedict XVI were educated here. Interesting enough is that Pope Benedict XVI was a member of Hitler Youth. Joseph Mengele was an SS Nazi doctor who also was educated at the Jesuit-controlled Munich University. Mengele identified himself as a Catholic and assigned himself to Nazi Germany's racial purity project, which reached its climax at Auschwitz. He was called Uncle Mengele by the children whom he handed lollies to. Sadly, they were experimented on a short time later. The inmates who suffered at the hands of Mengele often died from shock and infection. In 1933, communications between the Nazis and the Vatican were welcomed by the Vatican's Secretary of State, Eugenio Cardinal Pacelli, a former papal diplomat to Berlin. During an elaborate ceremony on July the 20th, 1933, a concordant between the Holy See and the German Reich was officially signed and sealed by Vice-Chancellor Franz von Papen and Cardinal Pacelli. Hitler had a dream of a one-world government. Like many other Machiavellian men of past and present times, the Vatican will covertly support anyone whom they think will have a credible chance of unifying the world under one political umbrella so that the Vatican can force their apostate religion on others. The Guardian reported, as well as other sources, collaboration between the Nazis and the Vatican, helping war criminals escape the end of World War II. Dictator of Spain, General Franco, who championed the causes of Catholicism, fighting communism, using torture and execution to crush enemies or dissenters. While many are distracted by the false front of Zionism, the Roman Catholic Church has infiltrated and commandeered the United States without the public being aware. It is obvious that the U.S. Constitution is eroding under the influence of the Jesuits, the crack troops of the Vatican. Breach of Amendment 6. NDAA Indefinite Detention Act without trial is an extension of the Patriot Act. Crafted by Jesuit Georgetown University educated Professor Viet Din. The assassination of foreign nationals, as well as U.S. citizens abroad by predator drones, is also a breach of the Sixth Amendment. Chuck Hagel, Leon Panetta, and Donald Rumsfeld have attended Jesuit universities, and all have held the position of U.S. Secretary of Defense. The mighty and widely ramified Order of St. Ignatius was powerful enough to procure by its interest far greater advantages to individuals than could any other corporation, fraternity, or even secular power. Jesuit General Jean-Baptiste Janssens. Breach of Amendment 4, spying on U.S. citizens without warrant. Former NSA Director General Michael Hayden and incumbent NSA General Keith B. Alexander are both Roman Catholics and tools of the Jesuits. General Michael Hayden was also educated at a Jesuit university. Revelations from Edward Snowden reveal just how widespread this illegal surveillance extends itself. Many nations are holding conferences on how to counteract this problem. Public outrage has been expressed in places like Germany, but it seems that some German government departments, like BND, have implicit involvement with the NSA. Many governments portray disapproval publicly to the media, but secretly aid and abet US spy agencies. Breach of Amendment 2, the right to keep and bear arms. Michael Quigley, educated by the Jesuits, sponsored an amendment to the Patriot Act prohibiting the sales of weapons to people on the FBI terrorist watch list. The trouble is that the FBI now regards some protesters and independent journalists as a threat to national security, therefore deemed terrorists. The First Amendment is on the Roman Catholic Jesuit hit list and is of supreme importance to the Vatican. Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law of the establishment of religion. When the Protestant movement broke away from the Roman Catholic Church, Protestants still honoured the Roman Catholic institution of Sunday. The Protestant reformers never completely severed the umbilical cord from the papacy. In this quote, the Roman Catholic Church makes sport of Protestants for contradicting their beliefs. Protestants accept Sunday rather than Saturday as a day for public worship, after the Catholic Church made the change. But the Protestant mind does not seem to realise that, in observing Sunday, they are accepting the authority of the spokesman of the Church, the Pope. Our Sunday visitor, February the 5th, 1950. By the annihilation of the First Amendment, the Vatican can sweep many other religions and beliefs into a web of deception and control, making Muslims, Buddhists, Protestants, and any other religion bow down in honour to the Vatican, therefore Satan himself, acknowledging her day of Sunday or Sun Worship Day that was not kept by any of the disciples or any of the early churches comprising Gentile or Jew. When the early
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal on the second half hour on this Monday, May 18th, 2015. And I'm glad the gentleman from the religiousmatrix.com did a recap of the connections between Hitler, the Nazis, and the Jesuits. And then as we're moving into seeing what's happening in America, we see the same power brokers that control our country educated by the same people. And the same thing really is happening here, except they're using democracy as their front. In the past, they used fascist governments, etc. Let's go back and pick up where we left off on this great subject of the Jesuit order, the United States under siege, and the Vatican Nazis.
Simplicity of the gospel and accepting heathen rites and customs, she lost the spirit and power of God. And in order to control the consciences of the people, she sought the support of the secular power. The result was the papacy, a church that controlled the power of the state and employed it to further her own ends, especially for the punishment of heresy. In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the church to accomplish her own ends. The United States government has three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The most powerful branch is judicial because they have the power to interpret the law. Even if a law or amendment is unconstitutional, they still reserve the right to make the final decision. The majority of the Supreme Court judges are Roman Catholic, the other two judges being Jewish. Laws can be written in a sort of ambiguous way, crafted by Jesuit-trained lawmakers, so that Supreme Court judges can interpret them any way that suits the papal agenda. There are hidden, laying dormant in many of the states of America, insidious blueprints for the enforcement of Sunday law, and a gross breach of the First Amendment. Blue laws are used, which refers to laws enacted by the Puritan colonies in the 17th century to prevent recreational or commercial activities on Sunday. And during the 19th century in America, some southern and midwestern states passed laws to protect Sunday as a day of worship both on a state and local level. Penalties for non-religious activities on Sunday targeted Seventh-day Adventists, Jews, and other non-religious people for not attending church, playing cards, baseball, and menial chores. In 1889, A.T. Jones, a Seventh-day Adventist, spoke before a United States Congressional Subcommittee, the topic of the discussion being the Breckinridge Bill, which proposed the compulsion of Sunday observance in Washington, D.C. Jones's testimony helped to defeat this bill, and he became known for his abilities in defense of the bill and knowledge regarding freedom of religion. We can see the Jesuits working covertly through the European Sunday Alliance organization to enforce Sunday as a day of rest. in the guise of a secular family day. Before 9/11, it was hard to imagine that a government could enforce such laws as warrantless wiretaps on citizens, detention without charge or trial, or assassination of citizens deemed a threat to national security. Is it that hard to imagine a government now enforcing religious observance by fine, imprisonment, and eventually the death penalty? While you're thinking about that question, there are drones circling the skies ready to obliterate anyone the CIA, NSA, or Department of Defense give authorization to kill. There are facilities in the United States that qualify as a quasi-neo-fascist system of dealing with civil unrest by potentially enforcement of tyrannical laws. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, sounds eerily similar to the Committee of Public Safety, which beheaded many during the French Revolution. Recent DHS advisors and secretaries like John Brennan and Janet Napolitano are Jesuit trained. Jesuit education was described by Jesuit General Pedro Urupe in these terms. Jesuit education would consist in the creation of multiplying agents. Lisa Monaco, former prosecutor, was an advisor to FBI Director Robert Mueller and advised the DHS on counter-terrorism during the false flag operation of the Boston bombing. Little do people know that Barack Obama was groomed by the Jesuits and worked in a Christian grassroots organization called the Gamil Foundation under the direction of Jesuit priest Gregory Galuzzo, who became his mentor.
And does he keep in contact with the organization now?
You know, once he became a U.S. Senator, he's very much in demand. So it's only on occasion we get to interact with him.
Well, an occasion's fine, isn't it?
Once in office, Obama appointed many Jesuit-trained people to key positions of U.S. government. In fact, no other U.S. president in history has appointed as many Jesuit-educated individuals as Obama. Recently, the president recommended apologist for assassination of Americans, Jay Johnson, as new Secretary of Homeland Security, seen here at Jesuit Fordham University. Jay Johnson was appointed General Counsel of the Department of Defense and is considered one of the legal architects of the U.S. military's current counter-terrorism policies. Jay Johnson is an American civil and trial lawyer, so his legal experience allows him to make the U.S. Constitution a very grey area which only lawyers have the talent to do. Jay Johnson has made quotes such as, "Belligerents who also happen to be U.S. citizens do not enjoy immunity, where non-citizen belligerents are valid military objectives." So as Jay Johnson take the position of Secretary of Homeland Security, one must ask exactly what does the DHS have planned for the future, considering his relevant experience. An alarming fact is that the French Revolution's Committee of Public Safety protagonists Louis-Antoine de Saint-Just and Maximilien Robespierre were Jesuit educated. This period had been labelled the Reign of Terror. That being said, let us now turn our attention to the portion of Scripture that tells of beheadings in the last days for not adhering to the man-made Sunday laws. Revelation 24. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, or in their hands, and lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. The testimony of military personnel that guillotines are being stored at US military bases raises concerns and interest. Maybe this information could tie in with Revelation 24 on the subject of beheading. Apparently, this way of execution is one of the most painless and can be administered with ruthless efficiency on a mass scale, sending stern warnings to dissenters publicly. The Bible describes the Sunday law as the mark of the beast. By the Vatican's own admission in the following statement, they admit Sunday has nothing to do with the Word of God and is their own invention. Sunday is our mark of authority. The Church is above the Bible. And this transference of the Sabbath observance is proof of the fact. Catholic record. The first observance of Sunday keeping by Christians that history records is in the 4th century when Constantine issued an edict
not requiring its religious observance, but simply abstinence from work, reading, "Let all the judges and people of the town rest, and all various trades be suspended on the venerable day of the sun." Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea claims that Constantine and his army were marching toward Rome when Constantine looked up at the sun and saw a cross with the Greek words, "In this sign you will conquer." At the time of the issue of this edict, Constantine was a supposed newly converted Christian, but also a sun worshipper. In a shrewd political move to unite Rome, Constantine amalgamated pagan sun worship and Christianity, transferring the Sabbath, Saturday, to sun worship day, Sunday. The organisation of this system of worship became what we know today as the Roman Catholic Church. Sun worship can easily be seen here in the monstrance, which carries the consecrated host for adoration. The communion wafer, which represents the body of Christ, is a sun disk-shaped wafer. So the Catholic priest, by supposed sorcery, turns the wafer into the body of Christ. The created creating the Creator? The Roman Catholic Church has a long history of quackery, following the superstitious even to this day. At every turn, you'll see within the Vatican or Catholic churches sunbursts. Neither Christ nor the disciples or the early churches ever mentioned Sunday as holy day. Yet many claim that because Christ rose on Sunday, that this day must be the new Sabbath. But history refutes this argument for the reason that Christian churches kept the Sabbath up until Constantine's edict in 321 AD. And yet some may claim that the Sabbath is exclusively for the Jews, but the Bible puts this claim to rest. Genesis 2:3, "And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it." This is clearly evidence that Adam and Eve kept the Sabbath. Many today are still confused which is the seventh day of the week. The majority of society are unaware that the Sabbath, Saturday, is the seventh day. The Jews came into existence much later in history. Another fact is that the early churches such as in Corinth, Galatia, Thessalonica, Ephesia, Colossae, all kept the biblical Sabbath and were comprised of both Jew and Gentile. The Apostle Paul, in his second letter to the Thessalonians, foretold the great apostasy which would result in the establishment of the papal power. He declared that the day of Christ should not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And furthermore, the apostle warns his brethren that the mystery of iniquity doth already work. 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3, 4 and 7. Even at that early date he saw creeping into the church errors that would prepare the way for the development of the papacy. The United States of America was a Protestant country, as the people who fled Europe were fleeing despotic institutions like the papacy. Historians claim this haughty power killed more than 80 million people for such crimes as owning a Bible or whatever the prelate deemed as heresy. The CIA World Factbook states that only 23.9% of Americans are Catholic. But the US government is mostly either Catholic, Catholic-controlled or Catholic-educated. So the interest of the Vatican will be paramount in the near future, and Sunday observance shall be enforced by law, and the world shall be enlightened concerning the obligation of the true Sabbath.
Okay, we're going to take a little break and come right back. Now, let's see what the mark of the beast and how it should be applied. Interesting. We'll get to that in just a minute on the Investigative Journal. Listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and we're going through a little bit of information.
The greatest misconceptions are spread through repeating opinions of others. Let us go straight to the source, the Bible, and learn the clear and distinct definition of what exactly is the mark of the beast. A beast in Bible prophecy is a kingdom, as explained in the following verse. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth. Daniel 7:23. Now the mark, which belongs to the papacy, is the professed holy day of mainstream Christianity.
Sunday is our mark of authority. The Catholic Church is above the Bible, and this transference of the Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. Catholic Record, September the 1st, 1923. Protestants accept Sunday rather than Saturday as a day for public worship after the Roman Catholic Church made the change. But the Protestant mind does not seem to realize that, in observing Sunday, they are accepting the authority of the spokesman for the Church, the Pope. Our Sunday Visitor, February the 5th, 1950. The Pope's title, Vicarius Filii Dei, Vicar or Representative of the Son of God, adds up to 666 in Roman, Greek and Hebrew. Revelation 13:18 reads, Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And therefore the mark of the beast 666 is a prophecy that the entire world will enforce a Sunday law by fines, economic sanctions, and then finally the death sentence. The mark of the beast is symbolic. It is an individual mark like the seal of God, which also is not literal but symbolic, signifying obedience to God's law. The forehead represents the mind and the hand actions, so the mark of the beast 666 on the forehead and hand represents obedience in thoughts and actions keeping Sunday. The law will start in the United States, and the rest of the nations will then be compelled to observe the Roman sun worship day that was founded in 321 AD. Revelation 13, 15, 16 and 17. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. The Lord specifically instructs which day we are to keep. Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. This was before the birth of Isaac, who became Israel, and whose descendants became the Jews. Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. In the issue of the contest, all Christendom will be divided into 2 great classes: those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, and those who worship the beast and his image and receive his mark. Although church and state will unite their power to compel all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond. Revelation 13:16, to receive the mark of the beast, yet the people of God will not receive it. But Christians of past generations observed the Sunday, supposing that in so doing they were keeping the Bible Sabbath, and there are now true Christians in every church, not accepting the Roman Catholic communion, who honestly believe that Sunday is a Sabbath of divine appointment. God accepts their sincerity of purpose and their integrity before him. But when Sunday observance shall be enforced by law, and the world shall be enlightened concerning the obligation of the true Sabbath, then whoever shall transgress the command of God, to obey a precept which has no higher authority than that of Rome, will thereby honour popery above God. He is paying homage to Rome, and to the power which enforces the institution ordained by Rome. He is worshipping the beast and his image. As men then reject the institution which God has declared to be the sign of his authority, and honour in its stead that which Rome has chosen as a token of her supremacy, they will thereby accept the sign of allegiance to Rome, the mark of the beast. And it is not until the issue is thus plainly set before the people, and they are brought to choose between the commandments of God and the commandments of men, that those who continue in transgression will receive the mark of the beast. Many think that the RFID chip will be the mark of the beast. However, this theory does not pass the biblical test, but nevertheless the RFID chip, facial recognition systems, the smart card with SIM, and many other identification cards, such as the new Indian smart card being trialled, that identifies 1.2 billion people, is validation that a system of world economic government can implement a no buy and sell ultimatum if the Pope's mark, Sunday law, is not observed.
Okay, so we went over that last week as far as what the Bible was saying about the mark of the beast, the Sunday laws. And in the past, I've done a number of shows on that. And you can go back to my website at Arctic Beacon and get a lot of those shows. And I have a whole bunch of different people from all across the country chiming in on those things. So this whole idea, what the gentleman here on religiousmatrix.com was saying, was trying to look back into history, seeing the connections of the Vatican and place them today in our country. And how many times, I mean, I have, was luckily, and I say luckily because I can back up my words with personal experience. When I had lived in Rome, I was quite naive, didn't understand anything regarding the Vatican's connection to the secular world, and in fact, like I said, had thrown away any form of Christianity because I felt deceived by the Vatican to begin with, but didn't know why. So luckily I had a chance to live there, walk through St. Peter's Square almost every day, and watch one of the biggest scandals unfold right before my very eyes while I lived in Rome. And from those days back in the 80s, I took that information and followed a numerous amount of stories. I could tell you the first one that I ever went after was something that appeared in an Italian newspaper, and it was about the claim that Jesus Christ's bloodline still is alive and well, and the head of this group in France, and his name was Jacques Plantard. He was supposedly carrying the bloodline of Christ. The story interested me. It was the same time that it was right after, few years after the assassination of Pope John Paul, before John Paul II came in, and that was interesting to follow that story and to watch how the Vatican kills their own and then hides it from the public. Now, this group that claimed, it was in an Italian paper, claimed to carry the bloodline of Christ, and their leader, Jacques Plantard, seemed to me to be an interesting story, because at the same time, the book, The Holy Grail, The Holy Blood, The Holy Grail, the Messianic Legacy, books that were coming out refuting the story of Christianity, it appeared, what was the Vatican's intention at that point? At that point, when I'd read those stories, the Vatican appeared to be on the other side. They were basically saying these stories are trying to destroy Christianity, etc. So they were taking the other side of the story. And when I talked to a couple bishops, a couple priests, they said, yes, this group comes up every now and then with this information to blackmail us. This is the evil that we have to put up with. And little did I know, well, so I took them for at their word, not knowing anything back then, and said, wouldn't it be interesting to go find this guy, Jacques Plantard, and do an interview? So I traced down his organization, and I went to France, and I'll tell you what, there was no such meeting. They had a little office, but there was nobody there. One secretary did come to the door, but I couldn't get in. And there was no way, if this was not a false flag plant story, he would want to talk to me. So I started thinking about it. Boy, what really is going on here? And the organization was the same one depicted as the evil force in Dan Brown's book. So what I'm getting at is, where did this come from? And what I found out was that these stories were all planted by Jesuits, by the Vatican itself. And the reason they did it was because they have to create the enemy. Just like they did during the time of Cain, just like Cain did. Now, the point is, The Vatican then claims they're Christian. That's another lie. They're not a Christian organization. So that was my first experience at the spiritual deception going on. And from there, 25, 30 years have passed, and I'll tell you what a story. The biggest story ever told, and you've got the chance to hear it every day on this show, on FirstAmendmentRadio.com, on the Investigative Journal. But remember this. Use your own head. Do your own research. Check it out for yourself, and then let me know what you find out. We'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Have a good evening and good night.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The White House is vowing to help Iraqis reclaim the city of Ramadi, which is now in the hands of Islamic State fighters. White House spokesman Eric Schultz characterized the fall of Ramadi as a, quote, setback and says the U.S. is supporting Iraqi forces with precision airstrikes and military advice. ISIS taking control of Ramadi is a concern, but Iraq overall has problems. So says retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and author Tony Schaefer. He made these comments to Sandy Rios on AFR Talk.
There's still a Sunni-Shia split. This sectarian split has become more perverse, more pervasive, and that is the root of why we see this complete failure of Iraqi